Hi there. Are you familiar with design thinking? Design thinking is a creative problem-solving process that focuses on empathizing with users and understanding their needs and developing innovative solutions. And the core of design thinking lies in its human-centered approach, as in prioritizing the user experiences above all else. And this method is widely used in product design, marketing, and business strategy, but it can actually be applied virtually anywhere. And that's exactly why my guest, Kat, and I will talk about how to apply design thinking to employer branding.
Artlist.io.
So, Kat, welcome
Hello.
to Building a Modern Employer Brand podcast. You and I go way back. You invited me to have a talk or speech at your employer branding festival in it's called Embol Festival in your native Serbia. Was it the first festival you had? That was a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually 2 years ago. Thank you for being a part of our first speakers lineup. It was so hard to start it back then, but it was so exciting. And I love that actually our community is still growing.
Now, you are known for actively building the employer branding community and ecosystem in your native Serbia. And you've also told me that you're a big hugger like myself. And very, very recently, like today, I learned that you're also a Taekwondo trainer, which I am not. And on socials, you're known as Cat on Coffee. Now, tell us briefly the story behind that. What's that about?
So a few years ago, when I wanted to start writing my blog, I was like, okay, I don't want to name it like my name and surname. That's a bit of, I don't know, boring maybe. And I was actually very known by a coffee lover, coffee geek. So all of my friends always asked me if they needed anything about the coffee. So I was like, let's try and let's see how people will react to this name. So actually, when I started writing, it was 2019. People started recognizing me as Cat on Coffee more than Katarina Šonjić. So it was pretty fun. And that actually stayed as my, let's say, digital signature. Yeah,
I love it. So what else should our audience know about you, Kat? Tell us first that, and then tell us also how on earth did you become so involved with design thinking?
So I'm mostly connected with the employers in Balkans. I'm helping them setting up first employer branding processes, mostly EVP, then after the strategy. And I mostly enjoy working one-on-one with people who are future employer branding stars. So I actually mostly mentor them on how to set up these first steps inside of the organizations. And they are mostly small and medium enterprises. When it comes to design thinking, I'm that person that always learns new things and I'm always searching for new topics. What can I do? And when I actually got first in touch with design thinking, I wasn't aware how it's connected with employer branding because I was like, okay, this is like a new thing for me that I can learn. And then when I entered it all, it was such a mind-blowing experience for me because back then I was mostly working with Anna, who is my mentor. She's coming from HR and she was one of the most active people here in Serbia that were connecting HR with design thinking. So I was like, okay, but we can also use it in employer branding. And that's when my journey started. So I'm, let's say, around 3 years in design thinking too, mostly exploring how it can be connected with employer branding. Yeah.
That was so interesting. So for those of our listeners who may not be that familiar with design thinking, can you briefly kind of explain what it is and how does it apply to employer branding?
So it's a very wide topic. As you mentioned at the beginning, it's, let's say, innovative methodology or methodology that aims to get some organizations or people closer towards innovative solutions. And when we speak about innovation or when we think about this topic, people are mostly thinking about some super forward thinking, cool solution when it comes to technology or something that will be built in 5 to 10 years. When we speak about design thinking, it's not like that. So innovation can just be some additional step in your process, tone of voice that you're having, or additional channel you're going to use for your communication, or just the approach that you're going to have towards your people. So it doesn't need to be this kind of huge, big thing. It just can be be a shift of the experience you're creating. And that's what I like about it, because it's so connected with everything we do in employer branding, where we have our employees and candidates in the center of the whole story, you know? So that's why I love it, because sometimes we tend to forget that small things can really impact these experiences a lot. We are mostly into innovative solutions, or for now, for example, implementation of AI. Of course, it's important, but what people need sometimes, maybe they just need for you to answer to their job application, and this approach can get you closer to what people actually need. And this kind of innovation is actually mostly connected with human needs, and something that we actually tend to forget when we speak about whole processes or bigger organizations. We are not that connected with our main personas, unfortunately.
That's so interesting. I've got like 10,000 questions in my mind already.
Yeah.
But let's start from like the cherries on the top of the cake. What do you think are the most significant benefits of applying design thinking to employer branding? Why should our employer branding audience care and get excited and curious about design thinking?
Yeah, I hope this will happen after this episode even more.
I agree.
Yeah, one of the biggest benefits is this empathy we are getting with our people. And what I'm mostly seeing right now is when we need to make a decision, when we need to create a campaign, to design an engagement campaign, or organize events, or do like whatever we need to do. We mostly sit on one table. It's 5 of us in back office. Then we quickly decide what we need to do when it comes to our budget. And that's it. Like, that's how we tend to solve things, And when it comes to this kind of approach, you are having your employee in the center of your process. And when we were preparing this podcast, we wanted to entertain you with a small example, which will be, for example, an onboarding process. So when you design an onboarding process, it's something that you mostly, like all organizations, have it in a way. Either it's designed or it's just happening. There you will have a person that actually is the center of your process. For example, someone who came to your organization 3 months ago, and then you will ask them how you can actually improve this process and design it all with them. This is the crucial change we are seeing, because we ask our people what they see, how they feel, and we are co-creating with them, which means that I'm not guessing what they need. I know what they need, and they're with me in the process. And this is like the biggest impact I'm seeing, and maybe the biggest benefit. And the second one would be regarding the silos, because we are mostly divided by our roles. So one person is dedicated to doing, for example, digital campaigns. Then we have a recruiter. Then we have a person in onboarding. Then we have someone in internal communications, someone as a people ops person that is trying to get your career moving. And then we have these small roles that are divided, and we are mostly going deep into our work, but we don't feel what is going on before or what is going on after or what is going on in between. And when you do this kind of approach, when you see the holistic view of the process and how people are feeling, you can actually work together. And the ownership is not just employer branding is my question or your question, is our question. So when it comes to employer branding, but also when it comes to any process that you want to design in this way, it will become our question. And one of the most common aha moments when I was working with my clients here in Serbia, it was like, oh, I didn't know you were doing this before me, or you were sending this data, these questions before me. So then people just understand we can create more synergies there. And that's maybe the second biggest impact I see.
When you talk about the process, the design thinking process, let's say in regards to onboarding, who would be taking part in the process?
So for example, let's take an ideal case scenario. If we want to improve onboarding process. So for example, we will have a person that is a part, like we say, it's our audience. So we will say we'll have a representative of our persona. So it will be one person there as a representative of this whole process. There will be one person coming from HR, one or two, depending on your time and capacity. There will be some people who are coming from communications, marketing, or employer branding, because depending on your role, like what are you currently doing right now? But when we speak about onboarding, there is always someone in communications involved in this process. You will also have someone who is leading this process. Let's say ideally it will be an employer branding manager, and you will also have someone who should lead this person. So for example, a line manager, someone who is in charge of leading this person through the process, who will work directly. It can also be a team leader. So you will have, for for example, let's say two people that are coming from the core business, if they're, for example, programmers. So one that is representative of your persona, second that is a line manager, and you will have three persons that are in back office that are mostly dealing with processes. So they will actually work together, and these two persons that are coming from business will maybe more understand what are their needs, because when we speak about onboarding, the goal of onboarding should be that person is totally aligned with our values and is able to perform individually, Then you're combining these perspectives. And from this point, you can really design whatever you want, any part of onboarding process.
Would that person who's representing the persona, let's say it was this program employee, be somebody who's just recently joined the company, who has like a fresh experience from onboarding? Would that be ideal?
Yeah, that's what I'm mostly seeing, because this person is fresh with the processes. Sometimes people tend to forget how is the onboarding process looking like. You can also have several personas. You can also have someone who didn't even join your company and then design his or her onboarding process with them, You can really play with it. But if we speak about, let's say, some kind of strategic changes, actually choose someone who recently joined. If possible, like 1 month ago, that would be ideal, because then they feel and remember all the things we did before.
So, another question about the process. Would you say that it's more applicable to developing processes for employer branding? Because that's kind of how it sounds to me, than, for example, developing just campaign ideas or content ideas. Or
I think it's applicable everywhere. Like if you can set up a challenge for the start. Like it can be, let's create creative campaigns and be known by them, So like it's a very wide thing. And that's what I like about it, because when you start the process, you can start with the wide challenge. And then after you will understand what is the concrete problem you're trying to solve, from the perspective of your candidate or employee. Right. I see most of the impact I see in processes, because there is where we have most challenges when it comes to in-house people, They're having troubles understanding who does what, where we can work together. It's just like to-dos. You don't have any time to improve your process. So that's where I see more impact. And when it comes to creative thinking, I think that comes after. And this approach can help you there too, but more impact I see in processes.
What inspired you? I mean, your mentor, Anna, probably was the one who inspired you to design thinking. Am I right? Was it something that you immediately realized, like, ooh, if she's applied this to HR, then I can do this with employer branding? How did that go?
When it comes to me, it's always about this personal contact, because I read a lot, I tend to follow everything that is going on regarding employer branding globally. So it's like a normal thing for me to do. But when I meet someone, when I feel it in my hands that something is changing, that's the most powerful thing for me. So when I met design thinking, I was working in-house as employer branding manager. And then I already did some strategic processes. We already had our EVP. So I was actually being a part of, let's say, a stable organization. We already knew what we had to do, So I was looking for something new to learn. I just wanted to learn something new, and that was it, And then when I met Anna, and when I actually started asking her a lot of questions, because whenever I learn something new, I always want to test it in my case and in my world. So I was actually asking her a lot of questions, how we can do this, how we can do that. And then I understood it's wider, because when you go to any education regarding design thinking, you will go briefly through it, and then you will just feel it, and that's it. And if you don't test it inside of your organization, you won't feel that power behind it. So I started testing out. It was 2020, I think. That's actually when we met. Then after, I started working individually as a consultant, and then I started testing it out with my clients. Then after, I wanted to educate myself more, so I became officially a facilitator, even though we are all facilitators when we are in employer branding. And then I actually started feeling the power behind this facilitation processes, because we are mostly working with people who are very, very smart, who are very open to change things, to contribute, but we just don't put them in this constellation, let's say. So that's what I started doing actively since, let's say, 3 years ago. I started testing out things, and then I found out this potential behind it. So I think the actually work around it, learning by doing, is something that changed my experience. Yeah.
What has been your biggest revelations? I mean, and not in terms of like your clients, but in terms of your own learning process of design thinking in employer branding.
So yeah, I still learn a lot. Like whenever I do something using tools from this world, I always tend to learn new things, especially when I work with young people who are still on studies. I tend to just mix tools, test it out and see how they will feel it. And I mentioned learning by doing. When we are doing any kind of education, when we try to actually transfer some knowledge to other people, there is a lot of ways we can do that. And what I believe that makes the biggest impact is when they try something out. So when you do an education for, let's say, 3 hours or 1 day, you really have time to speak about some topic, but you also have some time to test it out, to try it out. And what I mostly see in people when I'm using any tools, like from simple ones to complex ones, is when they actually try it out, they see, oh, it's not that huge. It's not that hard. It's just like a tool that helps me really, because when people learn new things, they tend to be a bit afraid. Really, these methodology brings a lot of new things inside organizations. So what I see most of the people are feeling like it's not so hard. We can really test it out. And after they finish some kind of education with me, they go home with ideas. And that's what I like mostly about this, because whenever you do a project or an education, you go home with ideas and you're inspired. And that's what I like, because from this point, you can actually act and change things.
So what are some of the common challenges that companies are facing when integrating design thinking into their employer brand?
Like one of the most common questions we are getting is, how much time do we need to do this kind of projects? And this is a question that we are getting from all worlds, like from HR, from product design also. And when we speak about time to delivery, it is an open question, but it also connects with what kind of changes do you want to do and what kind of changes do you want to actually implement in your organizations. When it comes to employer branding, you can always have quick wins, but if you want to have strategic changes and concrete contribution to your business, this is a way to go. So this is like one of the most common questions. And the second challenge would be like, what is the return of investment? Like what will change in our world and how we will showcase what is the impact of this kind of projects. So the understanding of the data and how we can actually track the changes is also a question that is always coming. But I believe this is an important thing to know when it comes to any employer branding project, you know. So we really need to be aware what we want to change and how we're going to do it.
So let's talk about some of the resources, the skills, tools, knowledge that are required from the organizational side if they would want to apply design thinking into employer branding. What does it take?
It takes for you to want to try it, you know, to play with it, of course, as it is with everything we do. But when it comes to design thinking, I believe that one of the crucial skill sets is facilitation, and not only design thinking, but also employer branding. I believe one of the future most important skills will be facilitation. And why is that? It's because we are working with a lot of different stakeholders. We are always having different questions. It's not up to us to know the answers to all of these questions, but to actually facilitate this process. So I believe this skill is maybe the most important one, and to maybe search for the resources you're already having inside of your organization and working with your people who really know a lot, understand a lot. Just put them in the space where they can actually work together and do things together. The second thing would be maybe understanding the purpose of the tools. So if, for example, let's say right now, after listening us speaking about design thinking, you start Googling about tools that are available, you will find a lot of things online. And that's why I love this, because it's already developed community. It's not just about finding the tools and fill it in, you know, this is the tool, we just fill it in and that's it, we have it. No, it's about your team working around these tools, aligning and understanding what they want to work on together. And this is like the maybe most important thing. So whenever you see the tool, try to understand what is the purpose behind it, and then after start using it. And the third thing maybe would be something that comes over time. And whenever you start testing it out, you will see that there is more and more things that you can actually explore, is mapping the potential of this methodology. So where is the space for you to impact and to improve things mostly, and why you should use design thinking for onboarding, or why you should use it for your employer branding strategy or designing an EVP. That's what I'm mostly doing right now, like using this methodology to design EVP. So it's not a copy paste thing, and I believe nothing is in employer branding is copy pasting.
No,
so
you should definitely avoid pasting in employer
don't
branding.
do that.
No.
and here you just get some guidance. You just need to you just use it with your organization, and you will see when you start doing it, you will see who are your best advocates for this methodology and who are the people that you can really work with. And it doesn't need to be a huge process. It can be a small thing, small steps. And I think you will just feel it. Just test it out, and then you will see how you'll feel about it.
Are there any emerging design thinking trends that will significantly impact employer branding in the near future? I mean, as we are now 2024, what makes design thinking in employer branding sexy? You know, you and both want to put some sex into this thing. So what's the clue here?
Let's make it fun. Why should we do things as we did before? So when it comes to design thinking, it's already a known thing. So I believe if you start speaking with your colleagues about it, they will probably know something about it. It was a buzzword 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe even 5 on some markets. Right now, it's something that people tend to know. They know something about it. So I think it's a cool thing to maybe try, test out, and see what will happen. Second thing that was on my mind when I was thinking about these trends in general, not only when it comes to design thinking, is that we are becoming more and more transparent when it comes to talent market. I believe that new generations will know about us even more than we know about us, you know. If we don't do things as they expect of us, or if we don't do things by their needs, I think that the price we'll need to pay on a long term will be huge. So this is the trend that I believe it's maybe the most crucial one. So using this methodology, you will understand what your people really truly need and how you can actually support us. And what I believe that is sexy about design thinking in employer branding is that you can actually adopt. This is an agile methodology. So whenever something happens in your organization, you can find tools that will help you adapt and see what would be the best solution for you. That's what I like about any agile methodology, especially about this one, is we were seeing a lot of changes happening on our market in the last 2 and 3 years. You can use these tools in order for you to adapt and to align your team around it. And what I mentioned at the beginning regarding the benefits is that when using design thinking in employer branding, this will become our question. It won't be just mine or anyone's who is employer branding manager. It will become our question. We will all be involved in this impact that we want to create, and what I really see as a next thing in employer branding. Yeah.
So how can our audience connect with you or learn more about your work?
So yeah, I'm mostly online on LinkedIn. So please reach out in case you need any support or additional materials. If you want to explore about design thinking, my personal website is catoncoffee.com. It's not a surprise right now.
Nope.
And
Easy
if you
to
want to
remember.
see, and if you want to see what we're doing when it comes to our community in Balkans, it's ample.rs. So you can go to this website and see what we are preparing. It's mostly in Serbian. I'm sorry, but the festival is English based. It's always in first week of October. So if you want to join us, we'll be very, very happy to host you.
All right. That's all for this week, my friends. So don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, comment this post, ask questions about design thinking and employer branding from Kat when you see this post or this podcast episode posted online. And hey, share this episode with your HR and employer branding colleagues, because who knows, maybe this is something that your employer branding really needs. And maybe this is something that you need to make it fun. Stay tuned for more insightful episodes on mastering branding, marketing, and communications in employer branding, obviously, talent acquisition, career development, and so on. My name is Susanna Rantanen, and this was Cat on Coffee. Thank you for tuning in. Moi moi. is also known Cat on Coffee, which is this, we really need to hear that story behind that name. And she's going to share her insight on how to use design thinking in employer branding. And if you are new to this podcast, my name is Susanna Rantanen. I'm one of the top employer branding experts and influencers in Europe.